Well, I've noticed for a couple of years the pictures that they've done with other artists, and so when they asked me, I sort of immediately said yes, because it's kind of getting to work in fashion, but with something that wasn't born in fashion, and I think it gives you more chance to do something original. The Autobahn, cars that don't shake, cars where you feel like you're on sort of an airstream. I mean, you know, as an American, you grow up with it as something, at least of my age, where like you see one here and there, and when you come to Germany, you see them everywhere. And I think in Stuttgart, you always see the star up in the tower. And so, for me, I always think Mercedes is luxury, but it's also utilitarian because it seems so part of the structure of the road here. Well, we had Dree Hemingway, and there's always a girl in a car, and this time they asked us to shoot Nico and Lewis, the F1 team. So it became a kind of double project where it's a girl and it's a car, and then there's two race car drivers and a concept car and a brand new car. So I think the idea was, how do you put all of these elements together and make one convincing picture? For me, the most important thing is to bring Dree, the model, into this arena and have her leave as the protagonist, so that she's almost by the end of it, she's learned how to race cars from Nico and Lewis, and the last scene of the film, as we're making it, is that she's driving away. I would say when I collaborate with a brand, there's something really thrilling, because it's sort of like going into their headspace, trying to figure out what actually excites them about their own product, beyond what pleases the public, but what's their inspiration every day, finding that and kind of bringing it into my work. Well, I mean, the first thing is that everyone wanted to drive the cars, and we were in this Mercedes wind tunnel testing facility, so we could turn them on, but we couldn't drive them. And I think working with an F1 team is such a fascinating challenge, because you're working with two people that are on the same team, under the same flag, competing with each other, and possibly wanting to destroy the other. So Dree sort of became this woman in between the two of them, but I think in the end she just became a third member of the team. Well, it's the first car that I've shot. I think that the thing with a car brand is that the object is the biggest thing in the room. With almost every other brand you shoot, it's a watch, it's a tie, it's a jacket. There's almost, at the most, there's a 1-to-1 ratio. But a car is like, it's having a building in your picture. It's a giant, massive object. And so, in a way, it kind of dictates how it wants to be approached. Well, I suppose in my artwork, I'm the brand. I think that what happens for me, it's the same thing that happens with a model. Whenever I shoot a model, I fall in love with that model. I relate to that kid that I shot, that kid I discovered, that woman that's in front of me. And I leave the project thinking that was the most amazing moment of my life. And so with every brand, for the most part, you kind of assume the position of the person most in love with it. And when it's something really exciting like a car, you leave wanting to take that car with you. Yes, I mean my family. My father's a muscle car photographer, who was sort of one of the original guys in the '60s in car automotive publishing journalism. So I grew up in American muscle cars. We're a Detroit, based family, and the German car has always been sort of on the other side of the water. So, in terms of racing, my dad was more involved in cars that were, a little higher off the ground, and definitely a much more kind of rough and tumble situation. F1 is kind of fancy. So for me, it's dress-up cars. Well, I'm very happy to be in Stuttgart, and I think that shows in my ability to maintain composure in such a long shoot. I'm so familiar with Mercedes passing each other on the Autobahn that I think I kept on thinking about what that felt like, and especially when we're playing with the wind, that feeling of a car passing you in the fast lane, that thrill. I've rarely driven in the car that's passing, but it's just as thrilling to be passed by a fast car and feel that adrenaline. I would probably drive to some kind of schloss by a lake, and I would have a picnic, and I would have a photographer to take pictures of me with the car at the lake with a picnic, and I would carry that around with me whenever I wasn't in Stuttgart. The film is really about trying to kind of penetrate the interior space of two men that are on a team but drive for themselves ultimately, and asking them to kind of keep all that energy in one room. It's essentially like turning on the engines of two cars in a garage as loud as you can. So the intensity of having them there, even if they're in tuxedos, even if they're very restrained, you know what they're doing next week. You know they're going to Austin. You know they have 3 more races. You know one of them could end up on top. And so the idea was to bring Dree into that. And I think at one point they asked me, when I had her in the pit outfit, they said, well, we don't understand, what is she doing in that outfit? And I said, well, she's on the team. And I think once we established that idea of Dree, as this woman who represents fashion, represents acting, represents beauty, she also represents a desire to excel. And so we end the film with her driving in the car to show that that all of these fantasies are doable. That it's not just a F1 driver that drives a Mercedes. Everyone can have a sports car. Everyone can have some kind of fast car and learn to drive it. And I think Dree is the hero of the film, and that she drives away with true pleasure, because for her it's not competitive. I would say that my photography style is intimate and open, but always with a strong gaze. It's always somebody looking back, so I'm being scrutinized by the subject because they've said to me, why are you looking at me? So my picture is about answering that question, why someone is looked at. Every single picture I've made, starting before fashion, always involved a piece of clothing. And that clothing involved history. And so if it's a color, or it's a season, if it's military costume, if it's, kids playing, there's always something, there's always some story being told by fashion. So my whole approach to working with fashion is always thinking about history, thinking about icons, thinking about what it means when a woman wears lipstick, what it means when a man wears a tuxedo, what it means when a woman wears a tuxedo. All those things have so much meaning, that every fashion shoot is the opportunity to kind of play with history. Well, I had a muse from the Stuttgart area, Jens. We worked together for about 6 or 7 years, and I think that I learned a lot more about Germany just focusing on one person and watching him grow. And but for me, the muses have to change because it's this flow of energy. But there's nothing better than working with someone a second time or a third time. You know, having the mysterious first encounter and then having this reunion and, you know, getting to kind of do it all over again. What you realize is that people have all these sides. And for me, fashion photography is the chance to keep on playing with those sides. Everyone has a different idea of what Germany is. Most people speak to me about Berlin. Whenever I say, oh, I have a history in Germany, they say, well, Berlin. And I always say, no, it's the south, and a little town called Schwäbisch Gmünd. And for me, as long as I stayed in Schwäbisch Gmünd, I was German. And the minute I left Schwäbisch Gmünd, I was sort of revealed to myself as not German. So the perfect day for me is to be in Schwäbisch Gmünd and to go to the bakery, to go to the swimming pool, to read, to go to a flea market, to buy old things, to imagine what life was like a long time ago.